Clarence, how old were you when you went in?
18.
Were you drafted?
First time I enlisted, the second time I was recalled, recalled on active duty.
What branch of the military did you serve in?
In World War II, I served in the U.S. Merchant Marine, served all over the Pacific and the Middle East, and then after the war I ran coastwise off the East Coast and then off the West Coast. And then I was recalled in 1952 and was in the U.S. Army.
And Clarence, what was basic training like in 1945? What was the environment like at that time?
Well, I had received basic training for the Merchant Marine at Catalina Island, California, just off the coast from Los Angeles, about 25 miles. And it was fine. We were there a short time only. But anyway, it isn't anything like the basic training in the Korean War or it is now. Of course, at that time, about everybody that was new in the service had to pull KP at different times. Kitchen police, we call it. But you always had your head stuck in a garbage can somewhere.
What were some of your duties?
In the Merchant Marine, I was a deckhand. We worked the decks, we worked painted, chipped. I was also on the wheel. My time, I was licensed to take the wheel of any ship in any waters of the world. And 2 hours out of every 4 that we were on 2 watches a day. I was on the 8 to 12 then. And 2 hours were spent at the wheel. And I was never in convoy until after the war was over, and then in peacetime we were in convoy. But anyway, then the other time while we would be painting or chipping or some type of work on deck.
So any downtime you had really wasn't downtime you spent doing?
Oh no, you were always busy. Now as a service it was different. Maybe when I went to basic training in the Army, I went to Camp Gordon, Georgia in the Southeastern Signal School. And they decided there I would go to cryptographic school, be a cryptographer. And to do that, I needed a top secret clearance. And so we filled out all the forms and turned them over to the FBI. And about 3 months later, it was granted. And during that 3 months or so, I worked at different odd jobs there, but every Friday I pulled KP somewhere on the post. But anyway, I got a lot of practice. I didn't have day-span hands, but I had tie-scan hands. But after that's in, we were sent to, well, first of all, the day before we left Camp Gordon, Georgia, we were taken into a room and given more shots. And I thought we had all of our shots. And I said, what's this for? And he said, well, we're giving you shots that you can go to FECOM. And I said, you mean the Far East Command? He said, that's correct. And I said, is that where I'm going? He said, I don't know. Your orders aren't down. And I said, where are they? And he said, next door. So I didn't question that any further, but later that day my orders were to send me to Fort Sam Houston, Texas for reassignment. But I had my FECOM shots anyway. And so when I got there I was reassigned to Camp Polk, Louisiana. When I got there I was told that they used 9 cryptographers on the post. They had 21. And so they asked me if I would like to, I had a security clearance, and they wanted to know if I would like to go to work at the post headquarters. And they reassigned me to the 4009th ASU, Area Service Unit. And we had post headquarters and things like that. And so I did. I worked in classification and assignment. I took care of the Form 20s, which all your records are kept on there. And then I did all the testing, the battery of tests that all servicemen are required to take. I did that for the post. We had the 35th Buckeye Division from Ohio down there. And did the typing test, did the foreign language test. They were all canned, but I still did them. Anyway, it was very interesting. After I was there for a while, they asked me if I'd like to go to personnel management school at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, so I went there. And was there 6 weeks, came back, and working for a while, and then we received a message one day that they were looking for 150 volunteers to go to the Nevada test site at the north of Las Vegas, Nevada. So I thought that sounded real good because we'd been noticing some pictures of senators and distinguished people on mountaintops 7 miles from the ground zero in chairs with smoke glasses. And mine wasn't that way. When I volunteered the next day, I had a page and a half a letter of materials to take with me, items, and including entrenching tools, the little foxhole shovel, and gas mask, and the whole works. So I decided then I probably wasn't going to be on the 7 mile away mountain, and we weren't. We were at 4,000 yards from ground zero, and we were in trenches at 5 foot deep, and we got on fine until a 30-second countdown. I said they already had us down. They had us in these trenches, 100 men to a 300-foot trench. And I was the last one in, and still had my 3 feet to get in. But anyway, we were down on hands and knees with eyes squinted closed and hands over our eyes. Most of the men said they saw the bones in their fingers when this went off, just like an x-ray machine. It just seemed to me like my entire head turned white on the inside. I never saw such a white light. And then in a few moments we were allowed to open our eyes, and then a few seconds later we were allowed to stand up and see what was going on. Within the hour we were out of the trenches, and they took us into within 1,500 yards of ground zero. And the one sergeant that was in charge mentioned, he said, boys, it's getting pretty hot here, I think we better get out. We're about 1,500 yards. So we did, we came back. And I was never given a physical after that. They talked to us and asked us, we were all right. And then 50 years later, it was 6 days short of 50 years later, I asked for a radioactivity test, and was granted one at VA in Columbia, Missouri. And the doctor said he couldn't find anything wrong with me, so as far as radioactivity went, so that's the way it was. Do you want me to run over where we went in World War II?
Yeah.
Okay. Out from Catalina Island, I put on a tanker ship. I'd never seen anything but tankers. We went to Hawaii and checked in there, and then went on down to Ulithi in the Caroline Islands in the Southwest Pacific. We unloaded there, started back for the States, and about 3 days out we received orders to cancel our orders and told us to forward to Port Moresby, New Guinea. So when we got there, we dropped anchor, and a shuttle came alongside, gave us our orders to continue, and anchor was raised within 7 minutes. So we went on through the Coral Sea and on over to Darwin, Australia, on the northwest corner of Australia, and there we merely slowed, got orders to proceed out into the Indian Ocean and turn north through the Gulf of Oman up to Abadan, Iran. And it's inland a few miles, so we had to go in on high tide, load, and then come out on high tide. And then we had orders to report into Madras, India, to pick up food, but that was canceled prior to our arriving, and they sent us on down to Colombo, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. And from there, then we came back down to Darwin, Australia, Port Moresby, and went to some other islands there close to the Caroline Islands where I had been. This was in the Marshall Islands we unloaded. From there, they sent us to Panama to load up, and we loaded up. And prior to getting to Panama, we received word over the radio waves that World War II was over. And we loaded up, and our orders were to go back to Okinawa, Buckner Bay, Okinawa. And I spent my 19th birthday in Buckner Bay, Okinawa. And they got up steam there, and we had to go out into the East China Sea to ride out an incoming typhoon. They had so many ships there, they had to put us out in 3 convoys to keep track of them. And so we went out, and we were gone about 5 days. And when we came back in, the island, everything on it was pretty well destroyed. And they had B-29s coming in from Wake Island, dropping food and supplies to the people that were the soldiers and troops that were there. But from there, then, we went back to Panama. And by the way, to let you know how wide the Pacific is, we were 28 days and 28 nights full speed ahead from Okinawa to Panama, and that's crossing the Pacific. So we went through the canal to the Dutch West Indies, to Aruba, filled up with oil, and went into Providence, Rhode Island, pulled in there on the November 23, 1945, 8 months to the day later from where we started. And then I came on home, and the rest of the time I spent, the rest of my 2 years I spent coastwise off the East Coast, either picking up oil someplace in Texas or Venezuela or the Dutch West Indies and taking it up to Philadelphia, Providence, Rhode Island, or New York City. And many of those trips up to New York City, we went through by the Statue of Liberty and went on up the Hudson River to Albany, New York, and that was a beautiful run up there. A few months after that, I went out to the West Coast and we sailed from Long Beach, California area up to Seattle, Tacoma, and Portland, taking oil. And then I was discharged from there. But again, then in the fall of '51, I was alerted to the fact that I probably would be recalled, and I was in January of January '52.
I want to get to that in just a moment, but what was it like? What went through your mind when you heard the war is over?
We really just, everybody was happy.
I know a lot of the people that I've spoken with, when they would come back and see the Statue of Liberty and see the things that meant freedom to them, it was emotional for them.
Right.
Were there any memorable moments for you during that time?
Yes. One thing I might mention is the attitude of the public in World War II. Everybody was patriotic. Everybody loved the flag. Everybody was working in some way to win the war. And no matter what they had to do, they did it. And it hurts when we ride in parades and see people that do not salute or respect the flag. It means a lot to us.
I know during that time, even the boys that couldn't go to war were upset they couldn't go to war, so they would gather things in the field to help the troops to make the items that the troops needed to fight.
One thing I'd like to add, Kelsey, is that on October 19, 2010, I was on mid-Missouri honor flight number 13 from Columbia, Missouri. We bused to St. Louis and flew on the honor flights to Baltimore, Maryland, and we bused into Washington, D.C., and we got to take that trip, and it is wonderful. I would suggest that anybody that's eligible, take it. It will change your life.
I know you showed me a picture of the Wall of Freedom.
Yes.
For people that haven't seen it or even know what it's about, explain what that piece means to you and what it is.
I will try. It's a wall of 4,000 gold stars. Each one represents 100 lives of American boys that were killed in World War II. And that hurts. I think that pretty well covers what, unless you have some questions.
Well, in 1951, you knew that you would be going back. During that time, what was the environment like? I mean, we just finished a major war, and now we could go back. What was it like for you?
Well, again, I was one of those that whatever the country said or asked, we did it. We just didn't question. And at that time, some were starting to waver. Because, you know, not too long after that, some were going to Canada. But that's to keep from going to serve. But most of the guys I knew, they were gung-ho to go. I would do it again if I was young enough.
What would you like my generation, the generation after me, even the generation before me, to know about either of those conflicts?
Remember that freedom is never free. It has a high cost. It comes with a very high price. But enjoy it and appreciate it. Love your flag.